Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I believe there will be no introduction, and I will be starting right away. In my presentation, I will be tackling with the Islamic universities, and we will discuss whether madrasah can be a model for Islamic universities or not. I am aware that I'm using more than one concept in the beginning of my presentation, so I believe that I have to create a definition for all of them. We talked about Islam as a religion, madrasa as a school, and universities. So when we bring all these three concepts together, can we really create a unity for that? First, let's say that, of course, without doubt, the Muslims in our day are seeking a unity in the world of Islam by solving all the problems and disorders in our world and civilization. Therefore, we know the story, we know the history, we know that since 16th century there is a retrospection, losing the physical superiority, and after the defeats in terms of military wars, the civilization of Islam started to go back, and the Western civilization built up a new world. And by the endeavors of the world of Islam today, we mean our long-lasting wish to create a new order in the world, having the upper hand in this new order that we want to be built. The essential of this endeavors, in the base of these endeavors, we have to accept that the power lies in the base of all these. Today, my topic is not independent and totally irrelevant from the topic of power, of course. Our main problem here is that the Muslims are facing lots of problems and the complex of inferiority, and I will try to create the psychological relationship between these. We feel that we are weak, and the other sides, the Western civilizations, are strong, and the reason of this strength is the technology that they have, the knowledge that they have, and the reason that we do not have this power and authority is something that we lack. Which is actually the appreciation in the West. And there are two different opinions to fill up our gap in this world. And the other opinion is that we have to share it. So there is a battle in the philosophy of Islam between the people who think that we should join the Western civilization by accepting their knowledge. And the other thing is that we should battle with the civilization of Islam. But we have to accept here that the knowledge, the information in our age became a tool for endeavoring to progress. But we have to accept that knowledge is personal in all corners of the world, and knowing the knowledge is only depending on the person's personal efforts and interests. This is here in all corners of the world, from the Western civilization to the Eastern non-Muslim civilizations like China, etc. Our main purpose is to acquire knowledge, and we accept that knowledge shall be a part of our path, the part of our direction, and all the endeavors that we have in this context shall have the basis of knowledge and increasing the level of our knowledge. The knowledge is a factor of change, and the people who are not entitled to have knowledge shall not be given it because it has, as I said, an effect to change people. This is an understanding that have risen recently, and this approach, or this epistemologic approach, and its change is in the basis of all the issues that we are talking today. The change, of course, is dependent on the existence of universities. We cannot say that the universities are the sole reasons of this change, but we can definitely say that the universities take an important role in this change. We can define universities as the sources of knowledge that people go and learn, and the structure of university is to seek the eternal, the true information, and it also includes a reaction towards that knowledge as well. This knowledge, this true knowledge that is sought out in the universities is the knowledge of the Catholic Church, of course, in a couple of centuries ago. And the universities, the purpose of universities is actually a fight between the people and the church in order to get the source of information from the hands of the world and give it to the public. Well, of course, it's a bit difficult that universities had this, claim at the beginning of their existence, because the universities, the first universities, were founded within the control of the Catholic Church. And today they have been converted into occupational unions and lobbies. These lobbies consist of two different divisions and classes. One is the lobby of students, the other is the lobby of teachers and professors. The student lobbies aim to create equality and fairness and justice between the students and the teachers. The teacher lobbies and the purpose of these lobbies are of this opposite reason, which is to protect the rights of the teachers and professors against all the other institutions that include the students as well. So we believe that the first university was established in the 13th century. Salerno Medical School in Italy can be counted as the first university, and it is an important fact. The first university was formed in the Roman Empire, in the geographical borders of today's Italy. We have to accept that. And when we go back to the 13th century Islamic world, we see that the Islamic world was at a breaking point at the 13th century. And it was that the world of Islam was having its peak in terms of physical power and in terms of culture. But there is a Mughal occupation, the siege of Mughals in the world of Islam, and it was a breaking point for the Islamic civilization. At the same time, the Western civilization started its enhancement and advancement in the culture and in terms of science, and after that time, the world of Islam started its recess, while the Western civilization started to progress constantly. In time, the role of universities kind of evolved to be free from the control of the church, and they got independent from the church on a gradual format, and universities apprehended a secular form. After the 14th and 15th centuries, the churches, lost their control and dominance over the universities, and after 15th century, the universities completely got disconnected from the church, and they were controlled by the national states that were formed after the 16th century. When we say university today, we think the fact that they are the establishments that gather knowledge, that seek knowledge, that discuss it and produce new data, new level of knowledge that would help the people to create new things and advance in science. Well, of course, we can also define science as well. It's discussable, it's debatable, but science is a way of progress, a way of creating new knowledge based on the scientific methodology, which is based on experiments and trials. The universities refused the type of knowledge apart from the scientific knowledge. And they closed themselves, the universities closed themselves for any other type of information like the occult knowledge and the mysterious knowledge and the religious knowledge. The universities only got interested in the practical knowledge, and they based their research on scientific methods, and they rejected other types of knowledge. We have to underline that. Until the 15th to 16th centuries, the universities also used to produce cultures, and Gastet expresses that. But after the 16th century, the structure of the universities were abandoned, and they became the tools of positivism, and they only acted within the branches of positivism, creating practical knowledge. So we have universities at the western side, and opposite of the universities in the Islamic world we see the madrasa. Madrasa is of course an Arabic word. It means tedris. It means lesson and school in Arabic. So the function of the madrasa are the classical educational institutions in which the Islamic information is provided. And of course, during the time that the madrasa reached their peak, it was possible to create Islamic knowledge and to transfer this knowledge to the students of madrasa. We see the first madrasa in the 9th century and the 10th century in the history of Islam. Before that, there were some madrasa as well, but their corporal structure, their systematic mechanism did not exist before the 10th century. At the time of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we do see some madrasa, but we do not see a systematic approach to the madrasa as an institution. This happened only, the institutionalization of the madrasa only began in the 10th century. The madrasa are our schools, our in the quotation marks, because we believe that the madrasas owe a lot of things to the Turkish civilization, starting with the Seljukians, continuing with the Ottoman Empire, and they gained their main systematic mechanism during the time of Ottoman Empire, specifically Darul Ilim, and also in the Abbasis, the translation offices were also madrasa. But the madrasa and the Seljukians in their time, served as a milestone in the progress of the madrasa. We see a lot of Turkish tribes within the borders of Seljukians, and they have different sects. They believe in different sects among themselves, and Nizamül Mülk Madrasa served as the unification all the Islamic information of the sect Sunni. The main purpose of this madrasa was to stand against the Shi'i this Alevi madrasa and to create the lawful, the fiqh information and the level of knowledge. At the period of Nizam al-Mulk, the madrasa of Nizamiye achieved a leap forward, which included many scholars in the madrasa of that time, even Ghazali, the famous Islam scholar at the time. After the demolition of Seljukian state, we see that the Ottoman Empire took that tradition and moved it even forwards, and Orhan Gazi establishes the madrasa of Orhaniye and another 10 madrasa at his time. This is an important number, and he contributed a lot to the creation and the progression of the madrasa. Of course, it is important that the Sorry, I have to take a look at my notes. Yes, it's important that the cities, the provinces of Kayseri and some other cities in Anatolia play an important role because they hosted important numbers of population of the time. Opening madrasas in these provinces, they played an important role to educate people in the means of religion, and this process continued until 1923 with the foundation of Republic. After the Republic of Turkey was founded, the madrasa lost their legal status and all of them were closed. But we see that some madrasa in Turkey continued to exist in an unlawful and in an amateur manner without any official recognition. And after this time, we see that the madrasa and their establishment and their progress skipped to other Islamic civilizations in Asia. Well, of course, it's not healthy to make a comparison between the universities and the madrasa, but it is also beneficial in order to understand their difference. If we are to talk about the functions of madrasa and the universities, we talked about the purpose of the university. The purpose of the madrasa is to teach and to progress the Islamic knowledge and the Islamic philosophy. And the madrasa played as an important baseline of the Sunni sect of Islam, and they were some establishments to practice Islam on its own, to improve on people's level of knowledge. And they have served with this purpose, with this function, from the first day that they were established. The Qadi, the lawyers and the judges in the Ottoman law system, the legal system in Ottoman Empire, were raised in the madrasa. Therefore, the madrasa were the establishments that educated and trained the legal and the administrative staff in the Ottoman Empire. One of the historical roles of the madrasa was to create the Turkish Islam culture, especially in the newly conquered lands and their Islamization, and to render the Islamic knowledge to these areas that are newly conquered and that are not Muslim. So we see that an increase of the number in madrasa can be observed in this period, in the progression period of the Ottoman Empire. The universities, as a comparison to that, the first structure of the universities that were established under the control of the church did not have this form, because church never gave the universities the authority to elaborate the religious knowledge, and we see that the role of universities in this context differs from the role of madrasa in the Islamic civilization. and the universities do not have a role to educate and to train some clergymen, some religious persons, and some some priests or other men of religion, etc. On the other side, in the madrasa, the purpose is to raise some clergymen in Islam, and the imam and the mullah and the legal figures in the empire of the Ottomans. The good morality, good intentions, and a good understanding of Islamic ethics is necessity to be taught in the madrasa, and we see the examples of these topics in the madrasa that were established in the Arabic Peninsula and in Anatolia. But there is a prerequisite, of course. You have to be a Sunni Muslim in order to be educated in the madrasa in the first periods of the history of the madrasa. And in the universities, in comparison to that, they do not have a prerequisite. They do not only teach the Christians, and they do not have this classification. They do not have this prerequisite in the universities. In the madrasa of Fatih, the madrasa of Mehmet II, we see they evolved a lot and they have become a corporal structures led by the Hoja of the madrasa, which means the headmaster of the madrasa. The science knowledge, the Islamic science and the knowledge that concern it is transferred to the students by the Hoja, and the curriculum in the madrasa were kind of vague, we can say. The individual training was existent in the madrasa. Within the classical madrasa education, we see the curriculum that contain many books, in the literature of Islam. In the higher quality madrasa. In the lower quality, in the lower level madrasas, we see that the classes were taught mainly orally and mainly in types of preachers. In the higher level madrasa, we see the existence of many different and advanced level classes like fiqh, etc. And the rational sciences were also studied in the madrasa, especially in the period of Mehmet II, Fatih. And after the period of Mehmet II, the madrasa curriculum did not include the rational sciences anymore. Well, they did include the rational sciences, but they did not give these sciences much importance as Fatih has did, and therefore the progress of the madrasa came to a stopper after the period of Fatih, of Mehmet II. So, in the universities, in comparison to madrasa, we do not see a Hoja-centered structure. We do not see a professor-centered structure. The center is the institution itself. They have a standardized curriculum, and this is like one of the biggest differences between the madrasa and the universities. Universities are more standardized, and the madrasas were at that time mainly individual and the Hoja-centric institutions. We see that in the universities, the astronomy, geometry, mathematics, etc. were included. In the madrasa, we see the books of Islam and mainly the Quranic knowledge and the knowledge of Hadith were mainly studied. There are a lot of books that we can give as an example within the curriculum of the madrasa. The entire list can be reached with the smallest research online. Uh, but I would list all of them, but we do not have the necessary time. In the universities, we see that they are based on the rational resources, while we do not see the while we do not see rational sciences to be emphasized and attributed importance in the madrasa. In the universities, we see experimental understanding of education, while in the madrasa, the education is mainly based on deduction, and in the universities, in the universities we see no discussion included, and not existent, not maybe not non-existent, but maybe much less appreciated, while in the madrasa, the method of discussion, the method of muzakere is highly important. In madrasas, we do not see exams and tests because Hoja is accepted to have a constant dominance over the children, while we see the existence of exams and relative tests within the universities. The universities had a standardized oral and written exams in place since their very beginning. About the level of training, we see the Hojas in the madrasa discussed many different books with their students, and the students see their Hoja as the ultimate authority within the school. In the universities, we see a similar method, but the role of the professor is not as high as the madrasa in the Ottoman Empire at that time. We see that copyrights were not applied in the universities, and the works in the universities are mainly based on their topic, while the copyrights were more important in the madrasa than in the universities. Of course, this copyright issue is not the same as we understand it today, but we can definitely say that there were some issues of copyrights in the madrasas. The administrative structure of the madrasas were based on the foundations and the support of the foundations, and with some help with the administration and the governance from the emperors and other high bureaucrats, and they were funded by these organizations. And in this context, the madrasa were considered as the necessary means of continuation of the Islam civilization. Therefore, they experienced pretty much no financial problems, and the education was free of charge. Even some students were paid to study in the madrasa. The situation is the upside down in the very opposite in the time of universities, in the case of universities. In the madrasa, the graduated students are employed within different positions in the state, in the administrative organs of the state, and we see some criticism about some favoritism in the madrasa. For example, Katip Çelebi criticizes the fact that the people who do not complete their education in the madrasa are assigned to some high positions within the state, within the bureaucracy of the state. We see that in the madrasa, We see in the madrasa some favoritism for the children of ulama, and this caused a reaction from the public on a main basis. So, as a conclusion, we can say that we can create Islamic universities because in order to improve Islam, we need some functions from the universities as well. We know that knowledge is one of the founding values of today's world, and we have to create uh, knowledge. We have to produce knowledge all the time because we are facing the new type of knowledge that is created in the West. And as a standpoint to that knowledge, as in order to battle this knowledge, we have to emphasize and we have to increase our own level of Islamic knowledge. Therefore, we have to create Islamic universities or the Islamic madrasa in which we can work to improve our level of knowledge that in order to compete with the Western civilization. In the Ottoman Empire, there were some studies to recreate the museums and maintain and to enhance their function. We know that after the foundation of the Turkish Republic, these endeavors were stopped totally. And in our day, we see that the Muslims have this inferiority against the Western civilizations, and they are working to catch the level of the Western civilization. And one of these efforts to battle against the West is to create an Islamic foundation and the Islamization of the knowledge, like Hajj Farooqi used the term for the first time in the literature. Hoca Farooqi proposed a new education model by recreating the sets of information that started in the West, but their Islamification and redefinition of the Islamic concepts like law, justice, fairness, human equality, etc. But of course, there are question marks of the redefinition in Islam. This requires further work and further studies in order to create a university of Islam. Especially the administrative and the regulative structures of madrasa are very important. And in terms of the educational methodology that was used in the madrasa are still valid today, we have to say that. And their administrative structures can also be applied today. About the further study need that we have today is to create a level of knowledge and go back to the old ways in order to prevail our battle with the civilization of the West and make our Islamic knowledge, Islamic philosophy progress. Thank you for listening to me. I have exceeded my time. So may God's mercy be upon you.